Welcome back, everyone, to That Blonde Girls podcast. My name is Carolyn. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I am so grateful and thankful you guys have enjoyed the first podcast that I put out. Now, this podcast is going to be a little bit weird. It's going to be a little bit off topic from my usual living headspace, and I think it's weird. It's a weird topic, a little bit. It's a little bit weird. I don't know how it's relevant to my channel or my world, but I think the moment it became relevant is the moment I started relating to aspects of this story, and I started to just watch all these videos and hear all the sides of the story. And the reason I really wanted to talk about it, because I think beyond the fact that everybody's talking about it, I think that says a lot, and I think that speaks to a lot of this whole situation and how many aspects of this whole situation can be a massive learning lesson for a lot of people, and a lot of people can take a lot of things away from each one of different aspects of this whole situation. And the situation I'm talking about is the Tati Westbrook and James Charles whole scandal and the whole experience, everything that's been blowing up, and everything that's been blowing up with James. And I want to first off say a couple of things. I definitely want to make it very clear that I am coming at this from a new subscriber to Tati perspective. That's the perspective I'm coming from. I've spent the last 2 weeks watching a bunch of her videos. I think she's an incredibly kind-hearted woman. At least that's the general vibe I'm getting off of her. She is incredibly knowledgeable. She comes from humble beginnings, and she is kind of stuck to her ground over time, or at least it seems like she hasn't changed. She hasn't evolved into this other person. She doesn't seem to have any sort of ego, and that's you can tell she's a very genuine person. I think the reason I can relate to Tati a lot more, and the reason I like Tati quite a bit more than some of the other YouTubers now, and this is also, I think, the perspective that I want to make very clear. I don't think I have a very young audience. I don't know what my age, what all of you, if there are any younger viewers out there or listeners out there, and I guess I don't want this video or this podcast to blow up and make create a lot of hate towards either people. I just want to share my perspective and how I related to almost both sides of the story, and what I think the major lessons that can be learned from this story are. And the one thing I've realized, and the one thing that's just kind of, again, maybe brought some attention to me. I am a little bit older. I am not 20 anymore. I am not James's age anymore. I am not the age of the Paul brothers or Tana Mojo, or I'm a little bit older, and I'm starting to realize more so as the weeks and months go by that I am not necessarily relating to some of the content on YouTube. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just growing up, and there are some things that I just can't relate to. And I've lived a fairly full life in the fact that I've dealt with a lot of people. I've had a lot of negative experiences, but I've had a lot of positive experiences. I've dated a lot of people. I've been around with a lot of people. I've been with a lot of people. I've met a lot of people. I've put myself out there with a lot of people. And I feel like I generally tend to be a good judge of character, whether I'm willing to admit it out loud right away or not. I generally know what's up with a person. I can feel or read that ego vibe, or feel like they're putting on a front to, I don't know, whether it's to fool everybody else or to convince everybody else in the room that they're some sort of person that they're not, or if they're being genuine, or if they feel comfortable in their own skin, or yada yada yada. I think you get the gist. And with James Charles, he was one of those people that I heard the name. I think I briefly, in total, out of the time that he's like become a big star on YouTube, I think I've maybe watched a total of 2 or 3 full videos. Beyond that, I think I've watched a couple of like clips of his videos here and there on like through other people's videos, but beyond that, I've never really watched full videos of his. Not because I dislike him, not because I don't like him as a person, not because I think he's a bad person. It's just he's not, he just doesn't click with me. And I don't mean that because for any personal reasons. His content, even though I love makeup, I love watching makeup videos, for me, the way he communicated his content, and I'm messing around with my hair and I can't get it going straight there, the way he communicated his content and him, I wasn't into. It just wasn't for me. And again, it's not to say that it's he's doing it wrong or he's bad. It's just, it's not for me. So I never subscribed to him. I never watched a lot of his content. But especially recently, I've seen him pop up more so here and there in other people's videos. Now, I think I was looking for some sort of makeup. I think I was looking for concealer, so I think I typed in concealer reviews on YouTube, and I found Tati's website. And I remember, I think Jenna Marbles, and I'm a huge fan of Jenna. I've watched her since the beginning. Like, that's the Jenna and Julian are my people. Like, I relate to her and to him quite a bit. That's kind of I feel like those are the people that I gravitate to on YouTube. I think she had mentioned Tati's name before in one of their podcasts, and I came across her video. I watched it. I liked her format. I liked her personality. I liked her longer format because that's something I do. I relate to it. I prefer a longer format, and overall, I just liked Tati, so I subscribed. I appreciated her honest reviews. I appreciated the negative reviews. I appreciated just everything she did in her videos. It seemed very honest. It seemed very clear and concise, and yeah, that's basically it. So I subscribed, and I started to notice a bunch of her videos had James in them. So I think I watched one video with her son, and James, and then I think I watched like a bit of her wedding video where I noticed James was in it, and that was about, I got the full spectrum, or at least I felt like I got a fairly good idea of the fact that they were very close. They had a genuine relationship, a genuine friendship, like they cared a lot about each other, and that is what I read of that situation between the two of them. Now, it's very obvious, and it's just, and I don't mean visually it's obvious, but it's very obvious that Tati is older. And I don't mean to be disrespectful or rude, but just the way she carries herself, the way she speaks, the fact that she is very self-aware of what she puts out there, what she puts out on her YouTube channel. She's aware of what she's sharing and what she's not sharing, what she's comfortable with sharing, and when, oversharing is overstepping a boundary. And not necessarily in a bad way, but just when oversharing, when you I guess I have to say, when you start getting a little bit older, you realize that oversharing definitely has its negatives. I should just say that. It has its negatives because it allows the public to write and rewrite and assume and create its own assumptions and feelings and opinions about whatever you put out there. The second you make it public, it is open for public consumption. And I learned a lot of what that meant, and the way I relate to that, a lot of that is when I went to university, I went to an art university. So the way I read that and the way I learned about that right away is when you bring your artwork into a classroom full of people to critique it, it's basically open season. Everybody has an opinion, and a lot of people will voice it, whether it's good or bad, and everything in between. It's going to come at you whether you like it or not. So you learn to have a thick skin. But learning, kind of gradually moving that into real life, I realized over the last, couple of years, the stuff I was posting on Instagram definitely was having a negative, not necessarily, I don't want to say negative, but it definitely had created this weird tone to the way people were perceiving me, and I didn't want to become just another one of those girls on Instagram that posted their butt or posted very half nude photos, or I didn't want to just become another one of those girls on Instagram, because I feel like my opinion, my perspective on life, my lesson, the things that I've learned in life, and my opinions are definitely a lot more valid and have a lot more power and just mean a lot more to me than my physical appearance. A lot of the stuff that I post online, the things that I share online, I'm very comfortable with sharing, and I know the second I put it out there that it is going to be construed, it's going to be changed, it's going to be basically consumed however that person wants to consume it. Whether it's, if somebody wants to get off on it, or if somebody wants to look at it as positive and actually reads my description, then, take it as it will. I feel like I've gone a little bit on a tangent, but I feel like basically what I'm saying is in this story and in this drama, and after watching, I started to see all these random videos popping up this past weekend, and I saw Tati's video pop up because I am subscribed to her, and I was a little bit confused when I first read the description. The second I read it, I'm like, does this have something to do with James? Do I really want to watch it? And I ended up watching the entire video. I think it's a 40+ minute video, and I'm glad that I did watch it, mostly because I feel like apparently a lot of people's opinions of her putting it out there in the public that she shouldn't have. I am coming from the perspective that I agree with the fact that she did it. I think she should have, in the sense that she is a public figure. This has been a public relationship. She has clearly backed James very publicly, and that everything that she said was appropriate. I didn't feel like by any means of what she shared was petty. I don't think any of it was honestly petty. She approached it as a complete sane and level-headed adult, where a lot of this weird subtweeting, to be honest, I don't even really understand what subtweeting is. I don't really live on Twitter. I don't like Twitter because I don't really understand Twitter. So, X, Y, and Z. I think that the way she approached it, the way she talked about it, it all really made sense as she explained her feelings. She explained why her initial video on Instagram Live was maybe a little bit irrational, or it was coming from a place of high emotions, and she was being very emotional, and it was bothering her, and she just let it out, and that she explained herself and gave valid explanation, which I think I highly agree with. I think it was good for her to understand her faults in this situation, but as a grown adult and a woman that clearly has been through enough in her life to understand where explaining your feelings and explaining the good, the bad, and the ugly is a lot more valid than just staying silent and letting a bunch of young adult to teenagers to young viewers and young audience members skew and twist the story into something that it really isn't. So I'm glad, that is my perspective as far as when it comes to Tati and James. Now, the one thing that I really found fascinating, and the instant thing that came to mind when Tati started talking about feeling manipulated and used, was it instantly dropped my mind right back to Jeffree Star's videos about him feeling manipulated, him being used, him being used by a lot of people in the beauty community. And it was really fascinating to me that, again, he's a little bit older, and I'm not saying he's in his 40s. When I say he's a little bit older, I'm referencing the fact that Tati and Jeffrey and myself, we're not in our early 20s anymore. We're not 16 anymore. We're not 17. We're not 18. We're into our mid to late 20s. We have a better sense of grounding as far as what life has to offer, what life experience means, and in the end, what that's going to teach you and how to react and deal with real life situations. So the fact that the way she started talking about it, that was initially the first person I thought of, and the videos that this video was reminding me of, was Jeffrey talking about his feelings about his past relationships, the way he felt he was being used, and how it really sucks to be manipulated the way he was. And I think a lot of this side of the story shows how ugly YouTube relationships, or even work, if we want to make this a little bit broader and kind of take it outside of YouTube, how working relationships and work and money and business relationships can get very, very ugly. And I think that whole saying of never work with your friends or never work with your family is exploding and showing itself on YouTube to the finest. I think the fact that a lot of these YouTubers are working with each other for so many years or months, and they're all conniving and manipulating each other, and they're all pulling and hiding texts and saving texts and screenshotting shit. This is stuff that this feels like high school to me, except when I was in high school, yes, we had cell phones and texting, social media, we had the taste of Facebook, but Instagram and all that was just, I think Instagram maybe just started, or maybe that was when I was in university. I don't even remember Instagram being a thing when I was in high school, to be completely honest. But I remember when texting was really blowing up, and this is why I refused to get into a relationship when I was in high school, because I knew the second you got into a relationship and something went wrong or you had an argument, it's the second one person found out, the entire school knew. And that's what this feels like. It's the second something just goes wrong or off, or somebody hears something, it's everybody knows and everybody finds out, and it's blowing up, and everybody's arguing with each other. People are crying, they're making ridiculous apology videos that nobody believes, and just that's what this feels like, and this is what it's reminding me of, and this is the flashbacks I'm having of high school. Now I kind of want to get off the Tati thing. I think that what she did was appropriate. I think as a person that's relatable, I can relate to Tati, I think her decision to try and reason with a 19-year-old, privately, clearly didn't work out, and I almost understand her frustrations. It's trying to, sometimes there's just years between people and life experience between people. It doesn't matter sometimes, because sometimes no matter how hard you try and relate, no matter how hard you try and, be a part of each other's world, life experience sometimes just will create a disconnect, and sometimes you just can't connect with people until, they learn their lessons, until they get a perspective, until they learn their own lessons. And I think that's unfortunately what's unraveling here for James. I think everything Tati explained to him, I think all the warning signs she gave to him, everything she talked to him about, I think she did everything she could. And I think that as a, older person, as a person that's, past their mid-20s, that's what a friend would have done for a friend. That's what I would have expected a friend to do for me, is to sit down with me, call me out when I'm doing something wrong, and for me to either take it or leave it, but actually, give it time, understand it, try and process why this person's coming to me, don't just brush it off as it's not a big deal, and move on with my life. Clearly, it's a big deal if they're coming to me and wanting to talk to me about something. There's clearly something valid there, especially if it's a person that's looked out for me and done so much for me for a really long period of time. So that's kind of my 2 cents on how I feel about Tati. I applaud her. I think that she has a lot of, the right people on her side. And girlfriend, I think if you ever hear this, if you ever listen to this, I think you being as upset and emotional as you were, I think it's incredibly valid. Feeling manipulated and used is awful. I think that everybody in some aspect of their life has felt that way, and I think for you, especially you and your husband, the amount of time and effort you've given this person, James, you've given this person so much of your time and effort, and you've genuinely cared and looked out for them. I think that says so much more on your character, and I think that positivity and that kindness, I am a 100% believer of karma, and I think that when you put out goodness into the world and kindness, it's going to come back to you in ways that you will, either it'll be immediate or it'll be sometime down the road, and it's going to, it's going to come back in tenfold. So I know this is hard. I'm sure it's emotional and frustrating and overwhelming, but I think you're going to see a lot more positive in the future. And I applaud you, honestly applaud you for sticking up for yourself and just being a level-headed adult in this situation and just being honest, being forthcoming, and moving on from the situation. And I think that's the best thing that you could possibly do in this situation, because I think a lot of this, the tweeting and the videos and the this, that, and the other thing, I think that perpetuating this, bullshit isn't helping anybody. And I think it's only gonna make things worse, and it's only gonna make things worse for James. So I'm not even saying this to Tati, but I think for James, I think all his fans, all the audience, I think all these people that are perpetuating that he's right, he's this, he's you're defending somebody that's almost indefensible right now, to be completely honest. And this is coming from a person that's from an outside perspective. This is somebody that's a new subscriber. This is somebody that's not deeply entrenched in all the drama of the beauty community and of YouTube. But this is coming again from an outside perspective of a month. This is a perspective that I've gathered from a month. So I think that for James, this is not going to end well, and I think you should have listened to the adults in your life, and instead of letting your ego and that was okay. Yeah, I guess, I think it would be appropriate time to jump into my perspective on James and the weird vibes. I mean, I also, the few times that I had watched and seen him on other people's content was weird. I got this weird vibe from him where it was the eye rolls, the silly faces that he would make, and it was almost like a condescending response he would constantly have throughout other people's videos. And maybe that's the character, maybe that's the whole, shtick. I don't know, because again, I don't watch his content consistently, but I do feel if that is a character, you're learning your lesson that you can't have that kind of attitude. But if that genuinely is you, from the sounds of it, some of the ego, some of the pompous attitude is coming back to bite you in a lot of different ways. And I felt even when I watched him in Tati's videos, and the vibe that I got off him was kind of weird, and not in a mean way, not in that his personality's weird, but just that there's this weird ego disconnect of I work so hard, I don't party, I don't drink, I don't do alcohol, I don't do drugs, I don't do all these things, I just spend all these hours working, I work so hard, good for you. If you, if that's your work ethic, and you've achieved everything that you have achieved because of your work ethic, fucking, that's amazing. And that's why I understand your younger audience looks up to you, as to understanding if you really do work hard, if you really put in the time and effort, something will come of it, and that's amazing, and I applaud you for that. But this weird disconnect of I'm perfect, I don't do drugs, I don't drink, I don't, there's no wrong that I can do. those may not be your demons and those may not be your vices, but your demons and your other vices are starting to come out. And the weird part was I didn't even make the connection between his like predatory, or the way it's being referenced to, his predatory reactions, or like the things that he was doing in his dating life. I didn't even put two and two together, considering I watched his video with Nikita Dragon. I think I was bored 2 weeks ago and I found the video, or whenever it came out, and I came across, I think it came up on my homepage. So I clicked on it because I was bored and I wanted to watch it, and I thought it would be interesting and it would just kind of give me some insight onto, you know, what his life is like. And I want to make it very clear, there's only to so much of an extent that I can relate to him, that I can relate to her, or if he prefers to being referred to as she, I apologize, I don't know. But as far as the both of them, I can only relate to them to a certain extent. And I did get certain aspects of the video I did relate to, especially when I was younger and dating and experiencing manipulation of people using me to get what they wanted, and I felt sorry for him, and I felt sorry for her, or her. I felt sorry for the both of them to have to go through certain situations where they're being manipulated and used for certain things, whether it's for sex or for, you know, their money or their, you know, the experiences. And I could relate. That was to the furthest extent that I could relate to them. That was where I related to them. And I sympathize with them because I know, as the young adults that they are, this is like the tip of the iceberg. And I do want to do a dating and online dating and just experience podcast this week. So I think I'm gonna try and get that up this week at some point. Just talking about my personal experiences and how to deal with online dating and how to get through it alive and find yourself a boyfriend, or at least try and find somebody that's going to be a positive influence in your life, or positive, like a girlfriend, a boyfriend, or just where the red flags are and what to look for. I definitely want to do that kind of a video / podcast this week, so look forward to that. But basically what they were, kind of everything they were touching on was everything I've been thinking about talking about in a podcast, and this is only going to be the tip of the iceberg for them. They're still so young and they've got a long way to go to figure out what they want, what they need, specifically what they need in life and what they want, and also what they want for themselves, who they are as people, and then where that can evolve into a relationship and involving other people into your life. So that's really how I could relate to their video. I guess I didn't really put the two and two together about James and Nikita talking about them finding and them dating heterosexual men and straight men. I didn't really put the two and two together until Tati's video, until all these other videos started coming out, and that's kind of when it just started to feel kind of gross. The fact that you do go after people who aren't interested in you, but you manipulate them, just, you know, maybe thinking that maybe they're a little bit interested or maybe they're a little bit curious. The fact that you are using them and manipulating them is exactly what people have done to you. And I hope that he realizes, I really hope that James realizes that in some aspects, what people have done to you is what you're doing to them. And this whole, like, manipulation of, you know, getting pretty boys to like me, or doing certain things with just pretty boys, or only doing this or doing that, like, I hope after this you really do realize that you gotta be careful when you involve other people in your life, because you never know, in those kinds of situations, people are vengeful, and especially when you overshare or share, and I think that's the next thing I want to kind of get into with sharing things on the internet. I hope that everybody out there who who is a part of this young generation of oversharing online, and hell, I'm even a part of the oversharing online. I hope these are the lessons there's some lessons that I've learned, but I hope that and I'm sure I'm going to continue to learn them. I hope that we all realize that when you overshare, again, you open up a platform for everybody to judge you. But when you overshare in certain situations, or when you talk about really private situations, you put yourself in a situation where people can take that, whatever you've said, and twist it, turn it, or sometimes literally just turn it around and throw it right back at you in these kinds of situations when everything kind of starts to turn sour. And I feel like that's kind of unfortunately what's happening here for James, which is really, 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 really unfortunate, because you know what, at the end of the day, he seems like, honestly, from my personal opinion, he seems like a really lost kid. He seems like he's been hurt. He seems like he hasn't found a certain kind of love that he feels like maybe he needs to validate his life. I feel like I feel like I've met people like him, in the sense that people that seem to have everything in their life together, where in the sense that they have their money, they have their career, they feel like they have, X, Y, and Z figured out. Now, the last puzzle piece that needs to be jammed in and fit into this picture perfect life that they've painted for themselves is another person. And I feel like he needs to realize that you can't just find a person and jam them into your life to create the picture, like the perfect picture. I think he just seems like a very lonely person, to be completely honest. He seems like somebody who needs to realize that being alone isn't this awful thing, that being alone and finding a sense of happiness and a sense of serenity in your solitude is incredibly important, that you need to be able to rely on yourself, that you don't need another person to be fulfilled. And I'm not saying that he's said all these things, but you can definitely get that vibe and the feedback, like the things that he has said, that, he feels so lonely and that he wants to find a relationship, and all the fact that he's looking in all the wrong places, I think is a big red flag, if there ever was one, for somebody who needs to step back and take some time for themselves to realize that you don't necessarily need a person jammed into your life to make you feel fulfilled or make you feel loved. I feel like the fact that he's overshared his sexual experiences, the fact that he's overshared to some extent, the experiences that I don't even know how to say this. I feel like even just all the stuff that I've now all of a sudden started, like, I did do a deep dive, like, I just kind of fell down a hole of all the drama that's going on with him and some Instagram model of him, and, like, his name is Gage, I think it was, and that he invited this person out to Coachella, and even though this person had said no, and the one thing I found fascinating and interesting about that situation is that, again, the way I related to James in that situation is I felt like I've been almost in that situation before, but obviously I am a straight woman who has dated only men. I've never dated other women. I've never dated, I've only ever dated straight men, so I can only speak to that experience. But I feel like I could relate to him in that situation, because I feel like I've bent over backwards in the past for people. Like, I've paid for, like, trips to go visit them. I've paid for dinners. I've paid for, like, the whole weekend, and I've gotten nothing in return, or I, in the end, found out that this person wasn't interested. And I feel really sorry for James, because in those situations, you feel so desperate to feel a connection with somebody, or even if you felt a spark or a slight connection with somebody, you want to believe that the picture you've painted in your mind is what reality is. And I feel like also that's something that may be happening for him, that he's painting this picture in his mind of these people that he's connecting with, and he's jumping from point A to point like Z before, you know, he gets through A, B, like before he gets through B and C. Like, he needs to slow down and read things, stop reading into things. I think that's maybe a big problem that he's having right now, is that he's reading too far into certain situations. And that happens especially a lot over text message. So if you're really interested in talking to somebody or really want to get to know somebody, my biggest piece of advice for you, James, and for anybody else out there is get the hell off your phone. Don't text them, call them, or try and find a time where you can sit down with them in person. And if you're meeting them for the first time, go out somewhere in public so, you know, you can avoid any weird situations or dangerous situations. But texting can lead to serious misunderstandings. People can twist them, you know, whatever text can take the sentence in front of them on the screen and turn it into something completely different in your mind, and it can turn into an argument over literally nothing, or it can turn into a situation that you've built up in your mind to be something that unfortunately it's not. And I feel really bad for him in those situations, because I feel like he's done this a couple of times where he's like, you know, gone above and beyond and put himself 100% out there, which I don't fault him for doing that. But you have to understand, when you're vulnerable and when you're putting yourself out there for somebody 100%, you also have to understand you do need to keep some barriers up. You shouldn't be making yourself so available to the person where you're like paying for flights, you're talking to them, waiting for every minute of the day, you're waiting for their text, or you're calling them, or like you're so desperate to want to get to know them. And if that whole mentality, if the person isn't giving you back what you're giving them, that should be another giant red flag. And it's awful to say, and it's really hard to realize that sometimes, but that's a reality. If a person isn't as interested in you, it's going to be pretty obvious, because they're not going to give back to you what you're giving them. And it's hard to digest sometimes, especially when you become incredibly infatuated with people right away, which I feel like that's a lot of the case for him here. It's hard to kind of step back and realize what the reality of the situation is. And it's hard to also not blame the other person and just, you know, throw all this like anger and hate at them, when the reality is, you know, the fantasy you've built up of the person isn't matching the fantasy you have in your head. And sometimes that's really hard to understand. And coming from a person that used to do that all the time, I used to do that all the time. I used to create expectations or situations in my mind. I would, you know, I was in a really awful toxic relationship for almost 5 years of my life with a person that I built up to be somebody that they weren't 10 times over. And now I've learned so much from those situations, and maybe this is one of those things where James needs to learn, hopefully, from this situation, that, you know, maybe this will be the turning point, and maybe it won't have to go on longer for years for him to realize that you don't want to be in these situations, because especially as a public figure, this is going to go really bad really quick. Like Tati warned you, and clearly it's happening right now, because it's bleeding. It's like this news and this drama has bled past like YouTube. It's bleeding out into the real world of, like, you know, parents are talking about it, friends are talking about it, like people that aren't as consumed by YouTube are talking about it. And this is going to turn into something really ugly, especially with the word predator being thrown out there. And Tati warned you, and this is again where the adult versus, you know, somebody that hasn't completely grown and learned from serious life lessons didn't take that advice and process it and put it into immediate effect, unfortunately. I mean, this is where I struggle with this, because I feel like the things that James has been through as far as, you know, being manipulated and maybe lied to in his personal life, the fact that it's, you know, he's turned that around and has done that to other people is awful, and it's so wrong on so many levels. And I feel like, you know, it's hard to, and it's kind of weird, and I feel like I should tread lightly because I don't want to sit here and get on the bashing train of like he's a sexual predator and that he's this awful person and that maybe he's an abuser and this, that, and I don't know him. And that's why I stay away from gossip and this kind of media all the time, because I don't know these people, and I don't find gossip and, you know, like celebrity drama interesting because I don't actually know these people, so I will never know the truth. So I think that that's where like the disillusion, like I become very disillusioned and very disinterested altogether, because you're never gonna know the truth, unfortunately. But I feel like where the line differs from celebrity life to YouTube celebrity life is that in the world of YouTube, when you are 100% yourself, or you share quite a bit of yourself on the platform, you are becoming a lot more open and a lot more of an open book and a lot more vulnerable with your audience. You build an audience and a connection with your audience on the fact that you are being 100% honest and yourself. And that's where this line gets blurry, because where celebrity drama, you'll never learn the truth. With YouTube drama, somebody on another channel, chances are, knows you and knows the truth. Where it seems like with celebrities, a lot of celebrities don't talk shit necessarily on each other, and we sometimes, again, will never know the truth of situations. They all seem to know that their PR people all seem to really also know that it's a good idea to just keep your mouth shut. Where on YouTube, a lot of people don't seem to have PR people. So a lot of people tend to just vomit out everything that they feel and think about. And I feel like, unfortunately, these are the giant lessons that maybe some of these younger YouTubers, the people that are in their 20s, the people that are, you know, growing from their 16s into their 18s, into their 19s, into their 20s, into their early 20s, these are the lessons you need to learn, and learn them quick. And if you don't learn them from this whole James Charles thing, it could possibly get uglier for you. That the things you share and the things you put out into the public world are basically open for target. People will take shots on you, and they will take it and twist it into whatever it is that they want. And unfortunately, sometimes in this world of being super open and sharing and manipulating people and doing things behind their backs and texting and sending screenshots and screenshotting everything, this is what happens with the world of technology. People will always find some piece of evidence, or will hide things from you and will use them against you and sometime in the future. And that's an unfortunate part with social media and this world of YouTube. And mostly more so with social media. People are more inclined, it seems like, to find a way to screw you over rather than to honestly be your friend. And that's really sad and really weird. And that's why I kind of feel conflicted of like sharing stuff on YouTube and putting content here on YouTube and like really putting 100% of myself here on YouTube, because I feel like I am starting to teeter that life where I'm not 20 anymore, and I don't feel like sharing everything about my life is a way to build an audience, rather than sharing aspects and lessons from my life and, you know, connecting with people my age or a little bit older. That's more so of what I want to do here on my channel. And I'm not necessarily interested in pretending to be somebody that I'm not. I'm not interested in becoming a character. I already know who I am as an adult, and I'm not interested in changing myself for that, for any aspect of either YouTube or, you know, for anybody. Like, I am who I am, and I'm very comfortable in my skin, and I don't feel like I have to change for anybody, and I'm not going to change into somebody else just because I want to post content on YouTube. So that's, you know, more so of where I'm coming from this situation. But I feel like this whole lesson of oversharing and, you know, really learning who your real friends are is a lesson you can still learn as you mature into an adult, which we're all still very much learning. And I think that this whole weird manipulation and business and friends and the business relationships, and I think that lesson, that serious, if anything, that giant lesson of working with family and working with friends is not a great idea. I think a lot of people need to take those, if you're going to walk into those situations, take those situations seriously, draw up contracts. Don't let your emotions get tied up in these things. And it's really hard to when you care about people and when you love them and you want the best for them. But unfortunately, this is the fallout. This is the unfortunate fallout, and this is what happens when you mix personal life with business. And, I hope for the best for the both of them. I honestly hope for the best for James. I don't think that he should have his entire life ruined over this situation. I don't know what the extent to the allegations are, so I'm not defending, I don't know what else has happened. I only know as of Monday, it's May 13th. I only know as of what, the drama channels have put out there, what Tati's put out there, what James has put out there. I only know so much of what has been exposed as of right now. I don't know if there's other shit that we don't know of and we're going to learn in the future. But I honestly just feel like if anything, again, can be learned from this whole situation, is that you do need to be very careful about what you put out there and be conscious of the fact that somebody is always watching, especially on public platforms. Somebody is always watching. Doesn't matter if you delete it. The second you post it, it's out there for the world to see. And that means the entire bloody world. So, that being said, I feel like I've gotten everything I wanted to say out in this podcast. I do hope that all of you appreciate maybe where I'm coming from. Again, I didn't mean to share my opinions or my feelings about this situation because I want to attack either one of them, or I want to attack James, or I feel like somebody's right over the other person. I was thinking about it most of today, and I just kind of felt gross about it, and I kind of wanted to talk about it just because I felt weird about it, and the fact that I've kind of I kind of took just one step into the beauty community, watching both of their channels and watching their videos and watching Tati's videos and stuff, and seeing how lovely and how beautiful their friendship was, and now seeing all this blow up in a matter of 2 weeks and turn really ugly. I just feel for her, and I feel really bad for her, and that I think that it's gonna be a lesson even for her to be very careful about who she does business with. And then I'm sure she has enough people in her life like Jeffree Star, like Shane Dawson, I'm sure her husband, to surround her and love her and to show her, that her kindness hasn't gone to waste. And I don't think it has. Maybe in this situation it did a little bit, but I think that even with the world and how things are balanced, I don't think it has. I think it's going to come back to her in a positive way. But yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents. I hope you guys have enjoyed this podcast so far. I will be posting more podcasts this week now that I have my voice back. I do want to do a dating video, whether it's dating online, my experience with dating apps, my negative experiences dating. I did want to share and talk about more about the time that I got drugged when I had gone out on a first date. I think that's another important thing that I think I want to share with all of you. I have done a video in the past about it, but I want to talk more about that situation and the experience, because I think it is really important. I think it's going to talk more about, I think it's going to put out there a little bit more about aspects of dating and how dating has changed. It isn't what it used to be, and it's clearly obvious about, even in this situation, how things have changed. The rules and the rules have changed, and the way people are treating each other has changed for the worse, in my opinion. And I think we can talk about that, and I think we can have a positive conversation about it, and I think there are lessons to be learned in every conversation that we can have together. So I hope you all enjoyed this podcast. I will see you guys next time. If you guys want to check out the video format of this video, it will be up sometime this week. Now, this podcast, the SoundCloud, the audio version will be up on my SoundCloud account, which will be in a link down below in the video. Along with the audio, I will post some links on my Instagrams and all that if you guys want to check those out at That Blonde Girls Podcast, as well as Carolyn_W3 for my personal Instagram, and my Reviews by the Blonde Instagram as well, and that is my YouTube channel. If you guys want to check it out, just check out Reviews by the Blonde. That is me, Carolyn. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and I will see and hear you, and well, I will see and speak to you guys next time. Adios.